He promised to protect me from the past. Instead, he brought my tormentors back into my life, handing me their gift on his knees, smiling as if he had done something good. I met Jack 2 years ago, during a time in my life when I wasn't looking for anything serious, just trying to find a way to piece myself back together after the mess of my early 20s. At first, what we had was simple, casual, a friends with benefits arrangement that seemed safe and uncomplicated, something that didn't ask too much of either of us and gave me a sense of connection without the heavy weight of commitment I wasn't ready for. We would meet up when it worked, share a drink, laugh about stupid things, and then part ways without promises or expectations, and for a while that was enough. But somewhere along the way something shifted, almost without either of us realizing it. The conversations got deeper, the goodbyes grew longer, and suddenly the space between seeing each other felt too heavy to ignore. It wasn't just about comfort anymore, it was about the way he looked at me like I wasn't broken, the way he listened when I talked about my dreams and my fears without flinching or trying to fix me. Slowly, we moved out of the easy, detached rhythm we had built and into something more deliberate, something that scared me with its depth but also made me feel more alive than I had in years. Jack became my first serious boyfriend after my difficult divorce at the age of 22, the first person I let in far enough to see all the messy parts one had spent so long trying to hide. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't easy, but it felt real in a way that nothing else had for a long time. And for the first time since everything had fallen apart, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I could build something lasting again. Jack was always very much a family man, the kind of person who called his parents several times a week just to check in, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely wanted to hear about their day, their garden, or the latest town gossip they were eager to share. He made it a point to spend every major holiday with them, never missing a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas morning at the house he grew up in, where the decorations always looked exactly the same year after year. He believed deeply in what he called traditional values, ideas about loyalty, hard work, marriage, and family that he spoke about with a kind of unshakable certainty that sometimes left me feeling a little breathless, both in admiration and quiet unease. It was clear that for Jack, the idea of building a life wasn't just about falling in love. It was about constructing something solid, rooted in the same kind of dependable, structured love he had seen modeled all his life. He wasn't afraid of commitment, not even a little, and being with him sometimes felt like stepping into a world that was simpler and safer than the one I had known before, even if a part of me still wondered where, exactly, I fit into it. I told Jack right away about my situation with my parents, not wanting to build something on half-truths or let him think I had the same close, cozy family life he was used to. I explained, carefully but firmly, that I didn't communicate with them anymore, that whatever relationship we had once had was over and that it wasn't something I wanted to reopen or revisit. I didn't offer many details, just hinted that the breakup had been serious, painful enough that even thinking about it too long still made my chest tighten and my throat close up. To Jack's credit, he didn't push, didn't pry or try to solve it like some problem he could fix with a few kind words and a family dinner. He simply nodded, took my hand across the table, and promised that he would respect my boundaries, that he would never force me to explain anything before I was ready, if I ever wanted to at all. For the first time in a long time, I felt the cold, silent burden of my past loosen its grip, just a little, because someone was willing to meet me where I was without needing to rewrite or redeem the parts of my story that still hurt too much to touch. The truth, the part one didn't tell Jack back then, was that I had actually run away from home when I was 16 years old, desperate to escape the violence and toxicity that had poisoned every corner of my childhood. It wasn't a rebellious phase or some teenage drama blown out of proportion. It was survival, pure and simple, the need to get out before the anger and control I lived under swallowed me whole. In a move that now feels almost surreal to think about, I literally married my best friend, someone who understood without needing much explanation, just so I could gain legal freedom and carve out a space in the world that my parents no longer had control over. It was a marriage of necessity, not romance, a quiet agreement between two scared kids trying to protect themselves in the only way they knew how. Looking back, I sometimes marvel at how young we were, how terrifying and brave it felt all at once, and how even after everything that has happened since, that decision still stands out as the first real act of choosing myself, of clawing my way toward a life where I could finally breathe without fear. A few months ago, when life had finally started to feel steady and safe again, my mother somehow found me on Facebook, her name popping up on my notifications like a ghost reaching through a wall I had spent years building brick by brick. The second I saw her name flash across the screen, my entire body locked up, and within moments I was spiraling into a full-blown panic attack, my chest tightening so painfully it felt like I couldn't draw a full breath no matter how hard I tried. Jack was there when it happened, sitting next to me on the couch with a book in his lap, and he saw everything, the way the phone slipped from my hands, the way I curled in on myself, the way the color drained from my face as all the air seemed to disappear from the room. He didn't say anything at first, didn't flood me with questions or tell me to calm down. He just moved closer, grounding me with his presence, letting me know without words that he was there, that he wasn't going to leave me alone in that moment of absolute terror. It was one of those quiet, invisible moments that tells you more about a person's heart than 1,000 grand gestures ever could. When I finally caught my breath and could string a few words together, I explained to Jack as gently but as firmly as I could, that I wasn't ready to give him the details yet, that there were parts of my past so tangled and raw that even speaking them aloud felt like reopening wounds I wasn't sure had ever fully healed. I told him I needed time, real time, not just a few days to gather my courage, but space to sort through what I was ready to share and what I still needed to keep tucked safely inside myself. Jack listened without interrupting, his expression open and patient, and when I finished he simply nodded and promised he would wait for as long as it took, that he would never push me into telling him things I wasn't ready to say. True to his word, he didn't bring it up again, didn't drop hints or ask careful questions meant to prod at the truth I had kept hidden. He just stayed steady, giving me the kind of quiet respect I had rarely known from anyone before, and in doing so, made me feel safer than any explanation ever could. We moved in together 3 months ago, taking that big, terrifying, exhilarating step of merging our lives into one shared space, with all the quiet routines and small compromises that come with it. It was a little messy at first, adjusting to each other's habits and rhythms, but there was also something deeply comforting about it, waking up next to him every morning and coming home to someone who knew how to make even the bad days feel a little lighter. Life became more stable in a way I hadn't dared to hope for after everything I had been through, and little by little, I found myself letting my guard down in ways I hadn't thought possible. For the first time in years, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could trust someone completely, not because they demanded it, but because they earned it through every small act of kindness, every moment of patience, and every silent promise kept without needing to be spoken aloud. I let myself settle into that trust, cautiously at first, but then with a growing sense of certainty that maybe this time, I had finally found someone who would not become another ghost in my story. For our anniversary, Jack surprised me by taking me to a beautiful, upscale restaurant, the kind of place where the lights are dim and soft music hums in the background, and every detail feels designed to make the night feel special. Everything seemed absolutely perfect. We laughed over glasses of wine, reminisced about how far we had come, and for the first time in a long while, I felt completely present, completely happy. Then, just as the dessert arrived, Jack stood up from his chair, a shy but excited smile on his face, and before I could even process what was happening, he dropped down on one knee right there by the table. At first, all I could see was him, the nervous hopefulness in his eyes, the future stretching out between us like a golden road, and then he pulled out the ring box and opened it, and my heart stopped. Sitting there in the velvet-lined box wasn't just any ring, it was my grandmother's wedding ring, the one piece of my family's legacy I had managed to hold onto through everything, something I had hidden away so carefully I didn't even know Jack knew it existed. The air seemed to thin around me, the edges of the perfect evening blurring as I stared at the ring, realizing that something was very, very wrong. This ring, the one now gleaming under the restaurant's soft lights, had disappeared after my grandmother died, vanishing along with so many other pieces of her life that were supposed to be passed down to me. It wasn't just lost or misplaced, it had been taken deliberately by my parents, the very people I had spent years running away from, the ones who had used control and cruelty to try to erase any part of my life that didn't serve them. Seeing it again after all this time was like opening a door I had slammed shut years ago, and realizing the monsters behind it had never really left. I couldn't understand how Jack had it, how it had found its way from them to him, and in that instant the perfect evening cracked apart around me, the heavy, suffocating past rushing back into a space I had fought so hard to make safe. Jack, as it turned out, had found my parents on his own, without telling me, believing that it was the right thing to do, believing that no proposal could be complete without their blessing. He had tracked them down, reached out, and gone to meet them face to face, even though he knew, even though I had told him in the clearest words I could find, how dangerous and toxic they were to me. He sat there in the restaurant, still kneeling, still holding out the ring like it was the most romantic gesture in the world, and began explaining with a kind of eager pride how he had wanted to heal old wounds, how he had thought he could bring my family back together, how my parents had cried when he told them he was going to propose. He said they had given him the ring as a symbol of forgiveness and love, and he looked so proud of what he had done, so sure he had fixed something broken, not even seeing how completely he had shattered the fragile trust one had placed in him. Every word out of his mouth felt like another betrayal, another crack splitting down the middle of everything we had built, and all I could think over and over was that he had chosen them over me, that he had invited the very people I had spent years escaping back into my life without my permission, without my knowledge, without even thinking to ask if that was what I wanted. I rejected him right there in the middle of the restaurant, my voice breaking and shaking so hard that half the room turned to stare, but I didn't care because the pain and betrayal pouring out of me were too big to contain. I cried, the kind of ugly raw sobs that racked my whole body, and I screamed at him through my tears, telling him he had no idea what he had done, that he had destroyed something precious by trying to fix something that was never his to mend. Without waiting for his response, without even looking back, I turned and ran out of the restaurant, the cool night air slamming into me like a wall as I gasped for breath, trying to keep from collapsing right there on the sidewalk. Somehow, through the haze of heartbreak and fury, I made it home, and the second I stepped inside, I moved on pure instinct, grabbing his suitcase from the closet and starting to pack his things. I didn't hesitate, didn't stop to think about the memories we had made or the life we had built, because in that moment, all I could see was the unforgivable truth, that he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and no amount of love or apologies could change that. Jack tried to make excuses as soon as he walked through the door and saw me throwing his clothes into the suitcase with shaking hands, his voice rising in desperation as he pleaded for me to listen. He said he didn't understand why I was so angry, that everything he had done was out of love, that he had only wanted to do the right thing, to mend what he believed was a broken family, to surprise me with a moment that could heal old wounds instead of keeping them festering in silence. He kept repeating himself, stumbling over words, trying to frame it as a grand gesture, as something noble and well-meaning, and every word out of his mouth felt like another slap in the face because he didn't get it. He didn't understand that by reaching out to the people who had hurt me the most, by dragging them back into my life without my consent, he had taken away my agency, my hard-won peace, and my right to choose the boundaries that had kept me safe all these years. His excuses didn't soothe anything, they only made it clearer that he had never truly listened to me at all. I found out later, through pieces of conversations and a few mutual friends who didn't know how much they were revealing, that Jack had been planning this for a long time, far longer than I had realized in that awful moment at the restaurant. He had been reaching out quietly, asking questions behind my back, digging into parts of my past I had deliberately left buried, convinced in his own mind that he was doing the right thing. I learned that he had even gone so far as to contact my ex-husband, the one person I trusted least, the one person who knew exactly how deep the wounds ran, and had spent nearly 6 months gathering information about my parents, piecing together ways to find them and reconnect us. He had done all of this even after he had promised me, sitting right across from me with my hands in his, that he would wait until I was ready, that he wouldn't push, that he would respect my boundaries no matter how long it took. Knowing that he had been weaving this betrayal into the background of our life for so long, smiling at me and kissing me while secretly dismantling the very walls I had built to protect myself, made the hurt settle even deeper into my bones, turning whatever love I had left for him into something bitter and unrecognizable. When I finally sat Jack down and told him the full truth about my past, laying it all out in raw, unvarnished detail, the violence, the manipulation, the years of fear and loneliness, I thought, foolishly, that maybe he would finally understand why I had been so fiercely protective of my boundaries, why some wounds could not simply be forgiven with a pretty speech and a family dinner. But instead of reaching for me with compassion, instead of offering the love and understanding I had once believed was unshakable, he looked at me with a doubt in his eyes that I had never seen before and said the words that shattered everything beyond repair: "Your parents warned me that you were lying." He said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, as if he didn't even realize the way those words crushed whatever fragile hope was left between us. In that moment, it became painfully clear that he hadn't just chosen to cross my boundaries, he had chosen to believe the people who had hurt me the most over the woman he claimed to love, and there was no coming back from that kind of betrayal. I kicked him out of the house without hesitation, my hands trembling not from sadness but from the raw fury and fear that burned under my skin, a desperate instinct to protect myself from someone who had proven he could not be trusted with even the most sacred parts of my life. It wasn't just the lies or the betrayal or even the cruel way he had dismissed my truth, it was the horrifying fact that he had given my parents my personal information, my address, my workplace, the details I had spent years keeping hidden to stay safe. Now, I live with a tight knot of fear in my chest, constantly looking over my shoulder, double-checking the locks on every door and window, knowing that the people I ran from could now find me whenever they wanted. I'm already meeting with a lawyer, preparing the paperwork to get a restraining order, piecing together the ugly story I never wanted to tell to strangers but now must in order to protect myself. I am gathering everything I need to start over once again, exhausted and heartbroken but determined, because if there is one thing my past has taught me, it is that I know how to survive even when everything feels shattered. This time, I am not running away in fear, I am building something new from the ground up, and I will make damn sure it is a life no one can take away from me again.